Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. My name is Shalini Gupta. I'm really excited to be moderating this session today on Founder Stories Indians Going Global. So, this is a conversation all about ambition, identity, and resilience, stories that stretch across borders, careers, and even generations. Very different panel from some of the other heavy duty panels earlier today. This is very much personal for me. So before I dive into and we get to know our other panelists, here's my little story. I was born in the northern state of India, Uttar Pradesh, in the city of Lucknow, raised in Delhi, built the early part of my career in Dubai, and I came to London 2 decades ago as part of a secondment selected from a global talent pool. But this journey actually began much earlier. In 1952, no, I'm not that old. My grandfather, a surgeon, he traveled to the UK to complete his fellowship, to be a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons from Edinburgh, which he did successfully. But despite his brilliance, he knew the system wouldn't let someone like him rise to the top. But despite his brilliance, he went back, not because he lacked skill, but because he saw the ceiling long before he hit it. He went on to become a state medical director in India. Life came a full circle when I returned to the UK decades later. The difference? A different time, yes, indeed, but also different choices shaped by resilience and purpose, and a reminder that success isn't just about where we land, but the courage to choose our own path, even when the road isn't built for us. Today, I work as a communications leader, looking after India, Middle East, Africa, and the UK business for Arup. Arup is a global design engineering consulting firm. Some of you might know us from designing the complex structure for the Sydney Opera House. Over the last 20 years, I've worked across several sectors from media, banking, insurance, telecoms, engineering across Delhi, Dubai, and London. And I've seen firsthand how Indian talent leaves its mark across industries and continents. Often, our Indian success stories abroad get wrapped in themes of hard work and humility. And yes, that is indeed part of it, but let's be honest, we are fiercely ambitious, unapologetically loud, ask my kids, and disruptors in every room we enter. I believe it's this tension between tradition and disruption what makes us unstoppable. Just to throw in some stats here, Indians make up 3% of the UK population, nearly, and companies founded by Indians in the UK have a combined annual turnover of at least £36 billion. Also, the largest diaspora of employers who provide around 174,000 UK jobs. From Canary Wharf to Southall, we've built a fintech firm, we've opened a pharmacy, and a cash and carry shop, sometimes all in the same postcode. The Indian mindset, and the Indian business owner sitting next to me would agree, isn't just about starting a business, it's baked into how we approach life. From negotiating in a local market from our childhood to managing complex family dynamics. I mean, everybody knows uncles and aunties who drop in unannounced, to the determination to succeed against all odds. Maybe it's the deep-rooted beliefs that things will work out, especially if you throw a good cup of chai and a discussion. We grow up learning to hold ambition with tradition, adaptability, and identity all at once. And I think it's the balance that has become our greatest strength. So today you'll hear 3 very different stories. Let's dive in. Please join me in welcoming Avinav Nigam, who is the founder and CEO of TERN Group. It's an AI-powered platform tackling global mobility challenges. Avinav, you started your career in Japan and you've since built businesses across Europe and India worth over $10 billion. Very impressive. Beyond leading TERN's bold expansion, Avinav also holds advisory roles with the National Skill Development Corporation under the Ministry of Skills, where he helps shape ethical migration strategies and previously has been the founder and COO of a property tech company, IMMO, where he played a key role in shaking up the residential rental market in Europe. Then we've got Bharkhada, founder and director of Navigate Business Recovery, who brings over 36 years of professional insight, helping corporate organizations and insolvency practitioners support businesses with financial challenges. V's support to business leaders is shaped by her journey as an East African Indian migrant and as part of a multi-faith, multicultural family in the UK. V rightly sums up her business in 5 words: helping all directors sleep better. Now that's what I call a perfect elevator pitch, eh?
Thank you.
Nilesh Choudhary, founder and CEO of Aikyam Capital. With nearly 20 years of experience in investment banking and fund management, Nilesh founded Aikyam to make India's capital markets more accessible. Under his leadership, his business has grown into a versatile firm offering everything from broking and investment banking to fund management, serving both global and domestic investors. Just recently, he was named the most influential CEO for 2024 by CEO Monthly, a global business publication. Very warm welcome to you all.
Thank you.
So you all have such distinct journeys from India to the world and in many ways back again for some of you. So over the next 40 minutes, I'd love to explore what motivates you, how you grew your businesses, and most importantly, how your roots continue to shape your impact globally. So Avinav, to start off with you, with your work on global mobility, how can India lead in creating transparent, future-proof migration systems so that when deals like the UK-India Free Trade Agreement boost skilled worker mobility, migration becomes almost a pathway to shared growth and prosperity for both the countries?
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. Really excited to be here. It's a great privilege to be part of this panel, and I think some really impressive speakers before us. Just one perspective, I think, and it goes back to actually the previous panel on soft power. I think what we're finding very clearly now in the global sort of geopolitics and the setup is that one of the things that is becoming very clearly a massive advantage for India and will continue to be over the next several decades is naturally what many people call the demographic dividends, what many people call our youth, our ability to contribute to the global workforce. And just for context, while we're sitting on the largest population the world has ever had, we're also sitting on the biggest shortage in skilled workforce that the G7, G10 economies have ever seen. So essentially talking about a quote-unquote war for talent that's happening at this point. It's really interestingly juxtaposed with, at the same time, a lot of media outcry and political posturing around immigration as well. So we'll tackle that one later. But in general, I think you've got the biggest shortage of almost 85 million workers, skilled workers, that the global north has ever seen. Lamb Foundation, Land Pritchard almost talks about it at being over 400 million over the next 20 years. But let's leave it at 85 million for now. And at the same time, you've got an incredibly booming economy, fast-growing economy that's also sitting on the exact opposite problem, which is we've at this stage got 105 million either unemployed or stealth unemployed or daily wage employed workers, and largely between sort of 18 to 35. So now, how do you really think about this in the context of India doing actually pretty well in terms of the GDP growth and so on? So I think what we figured out is there is a challenge for certain systems like healthcare certain systems like old age care, especially for countries like, let's say, the UK, Germany, Japan, US, Canada, Australia, where average ages are now, above 43, 45. You've got replacement rates or fertility rates dropping below 1.3 in, South Korea at 0.8. So essentially, the population is not going to get replaced. So naturally, that transition, and over the next couple of decades, you'll see the biggest migration of talent, especially high-skilled talent, that will only accelerate. And that is very odd in the context of what we're seeing in the media. So India is projected to be 40% of the global workforce in the next 10 years. So look, these are all the contextual points that I wanted to sort of just, data I wanted to put out there. At the same time, what's happening is we've never seen more exploitation. We've never seen more human trafficking. We've never seen more modern slavery issues. And it's again, with all of this, supply chain that's essentially been built for, people migrating and moving countries, like as did I, there needs to be a much better ethical system, right, to behind it. So I started off my career essentially moving from, I studied in Bombay, this super nerdy place, for those who know it, called IIT. I went from there to rural Japan as my first job with an American company called Procter & Gamble, literally working in a production plant, with 300 Japanese people and one Indian guy, right? So I am literally the definition of, an economic migrant trying to break in. I think the things that really worked and continue to be responsible, at least in my case, it was a white-collar job, right? But that's not true for many people trying to get nurse roles or trying to get roles in old age care or trying to get roles as technicians, as engineers in real estate and hospitality. So I think there needs to be a much more bigger emphasis on solving some of that through government policy making and sort of more transparent digital systems, and we'll come to potentially later on how. But just wanted to set a little bit of context on why this is very important to us, and that's sort of what we've been building with TERN, is a fully transparent digital system that puts power back in the hands of the talent, power back in the hands of the quote-unquote sending countries, and away from effectively a system that's been highly exploitative of immigrants trying to move overseas. So that's something for me is a deeply personal topic. It was not necessarily what I wanted to get into. It was not something that I initially imagined. I was building other companies, but this sort of happened purely out of a few very personal experiences of mine, where I lost a friend to cancer in the UK. After she was treated, they didn't have enough workforce or nurses to take care of her. Was sent to social care, then sent home, and so on. So it's a deeply personal topic for me, and I'd love to sort of spend a bit more time later on, if that's okay.
That's great. Thanks, Avinav. So, V, my next question's to you. I know being British Indian means a lot. When we were talking earlier about your journey, when we were chatting, often this identity carries stories of migration, stories that fuel ambition, and a lot of resilience. So, how has your identity as an East African Indian migrant influenced your approach to business ethics? Do you see your work as offering second chances because of that background?
Thank you, Shalini. Is this on? No. Okay. Thank you, Shalini. I like to believe that people deserve second chances, and they don't believe half the time that they almost believe that they are the mistake when they're not. The mistake happens because it's a mistake. They're not the mistake, So I grew up in a very multicultural family. My grandparents are from Uganda, traveled to India, then from India to the UK. I'm also married to Frank, who's very British, and he's there. So how do I bring that identity into the boardroom? I bring that identity into the boardroom by saying to people, the color of my skin, my name, my history, doesn't affect what comes out of my mouth, if that makes sense. So I'm at a point where I'm there to explain to the directors and clients that I represent that I've got your back. I'm here to support you, whether they are English, whether they are from a different country altogether. It doesn't matter. I have to explain to them that I'm a human being. I'm ready to accept that they have made a mistake and help them understand that they've made the mistake as well. And then going back to helping them sleeping better at night, giving them the tools and saying, I've been doing this for 36 years, but it's not about the 36 years of my experience that matters. It's about sitting with them and feeling that pain, you know, for men and women. I was having this conversation with Raina the other day that, you know, 95% of my clients are men. And why is that? Is it because women manage businesses better? We don't know. You know, that research hasn't been done yet. So I think it's a case of sort of bringing the identity of my resilience, my family, the rules and the hard work that I grew up with into that boardroom, into the client, and teaching that client that it's okay. It's absolutely okay. Don't make the mistake be the mistake, you know. There's always a way out. As I said to you earlier, my strapline is where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a V, there's always a way, and we always find a solution, you know? So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, thanks, V. Nilesh,
Yeah.
so you've built Aikyam Capital, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Aikyam Capital.
Aikyam Capital, around the idea of enabling global investors to get access to, you know, seamless investments in India. How has been your experience of working across different cultures influence the way you actually do business? And in doing that, how do you sort of strike a balance between, you know, staying true to your purpose and then working in such a diverse environment?
So, having worked and lived in different cultures, you know, I have first-hand experience that the diversity in the culture, the value system, and the business perspectives, you know, it has become a catalyst to the innovation and growth. So, at AKM Capital, you know, this cross-cultural perspective is core to our mission to create an ecosystem for the global investors to access the Indian capital markets in a seamless way. You know, see, India is a growing market. You know, is a growing country, and there's a huge potential for investments in India. But we may all like it or not. But the truth is that India is a complex market. Being a capital controlled country, there is certain complexity. We have different rules and regulations. We have different multiple regulators. The rules of different regulators are not aligned, so it creates complexity. But needless to say, if we navigate through that complex regulatory framework, it's a wonderful place to make investments. So in our business, we strike a balance by educating our global investors about this Indian regulatory framework. We believe that if they understand the Indian regulatory framework very well, and then they implement their investment hypothesis into an investment strategy and then make investments in India, they make decent returns. And a very balanced and risk-adjusted returns are generated in India. So, uh, so if we can, you know, by being transparent, communicate well, educate them, you know, this is how we strike a balance between the complex Indian regulatory framework and the investment opportunities in India.
So you spoke about complexities and striking a balance. And it's really interesting, you know, global success stories, they often skip the tough parts. When I'm talking to my team, I always, you know, use the term growth mindset. It's failing fast, but it's learning faster. What is important? So I'm really interested to find out the turning points for you in your businesses when you weren't as successful or you had to pivot, or the word that we're afraid to say, you know, you failed. That shaped the way you lead your businesses today. To start off with you, Avinav, you started your career in Japan. You mentioned If I'm right, you were a vegetarian with no vegetarian food in Japan, and you still coped with that. And you're building a $10 billion sort of, business. So what did Japan in that context, that I've just mentioned about pivoting, teach you about adaptation? And how do you carry that into your leadership style?
Sure. Sorry for leading into this answer before you asked the question, in the first one. So I think Japan was very interesting. As I said, sort of very starry-eyed, sort of 20-year-old boy, sort of not knowing what to expect. Got hired out of my university in Bombay and sort of planted in the middle of nowhere, as I said, in rural Japan. And essentially, one of the craziest things was, first of all, I told my kids, don't do that. And that's a stupid thing to do. But I think it's also character forming, right? I think it was one of the toughest things I've had to do was just have a cold start into new country, into new culture, into new language. I didn't know Japanese. I didn't know what the food was like. I don't know what was going to happen to me. I had to lead a team suddenly of people that had, obviously decades more experience than me. It was really bizarre. But I think at the same time, just, having to really, you talked about the perseverance, you talked about the hard work. I think the biggest factor for me, and given that sort of my childhood has also been about migration. I grew up between the UK and India. I've moved sort of 9 times within India. My dad was sort of the head of human resources for the Indian Railways. He was sent to study in the UK. I think it set a bit of context for me in terms of being adaptive, in really accepting that your system of values and beliefs might be different from the country you're about to serve or about to integrate into. I genuinely believe there is an inner circle and there's an outer circle. And Japan has this concept where you're almost always on the outer circle as a foreigner until you sort of really start to pick up the language, you start to make an effort, you really start to understand the customs, not just practice them, but the reasoning behind it. Why do they have to move the green matcha bowl 7 times, right? You really need to get into that level of detail and complexity. I think intricacy, rather, is the better word. I think that really helped. And it was not really the hard aspects around the job, around the technical, how do you, build, I don't know, the aerial detergents, or it was really about the softer aspects. So I think people don't understand it enough. My view is going way beyond your comfort zone and showing up every single day. You will slowly find that people start to accept you. And as they start to accept you, then you start to thrive in those roles. That's sort of one piece I would say that has been really helpful for me over the years. I speak Japanese, which was completely useless apart from my job there. Now it's coming back as we're building a talent mobility platform towards, you guessed it, right, Japan as well. Of course, the UK and Germany. But I think the other thing that probably contributed a little bit to a positive outcome, one would say, was humility. And I think just the knowledge that even if you might be the smartest person in your previous life, in that particular education or that particular job, you almost start every time being the dumbest person in the room. So I think that's sort of the second thing as a mindset that I think has really helped me personally. I think the third thing in sort of building a global org, and we've spread across 13 countries, and our teams are sort of everywhere, from Japan to sort of North America, and I think Africa as well. I think the other key aspect has really been about building empathy first, always. And I know that sounds sort of easier said than done, but given that we are now working on a talent mobility platform, collaborating with governments like Telangana as well, Japan government, Indian government, the German Health Ministry, the UK NHS, in many, many ways, Indian Skilling Council, what we realized is that at the core of it, it's not a number on an Excel sheet. These are people with lives and creating, they're taking their dreams with them, they're taking their aspirations with them to a new country. And that education to my teams, to our teams, has been so critical, right? Is you have to first think about putting yourself in their shoes, understanding that they're uprooting everything about what they know from their former lives and trying to start a new one. And the same thing goes for, in our case, the employers or the receiving countries and the communities there, where they need to understand that there is so much of sacrifice that has gone into being able to provide that additional care service to an old age person, a 72-year-old dementia patient here in, I don't know, Norfolk, right? And I often think that we sort of lose the perspective sometimes behind the numbers, and the fact that these are big businesses and there's a massive opportunities. But I think at the end of the day, just building with empathy has sort of, for me at least over the years, been extremely important. And I think it shines through to the teams, but also then to sort of the people we serve and the communities we help.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point about empathy and being in the shoes of people you serve. And I think that comes naturally to us as Indians because at any given point of time, we're living cultures within cultures, I feel, and speaking or understanding, several languages at the same time. So I think cultural intelligence is what comes quite naturally to us in that capacity. So my next question is to you, Vi. In your sort of, your business and helping individuals and, other sort of business directors navigate the financial challenges, you worked with footballers, you worked with Bollywood celebrities, and some very, very public insolvency cases, I hear. What's your mindset when you're guiding people through that? How do you balance being the expert in the room, but also being their trusted advisor? That must be pretty hard.
So I think numbers, people get so hooked up on numbers that it's all about, is it working, the mic, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. People focus that, starting a business is get the numbers right, make a lot of money. Success will come to me when the bank balance shows 50, 500 or £5 million in my bank account. Over the last 36 years, I've seen directors make, sort of have car crashes, emotional and personal car crashes. It's a complete and utter wreck, the way that they run their business when they come to me, It's trying to get them to understand that you've crashed. How are we now going to clear up the mess? So it's really trying to get behind their mindset emotionally. It's at the end of the day, when I talk to them in the first meeting, the second meeting, and the third meeting, the actual cause of the wreckage and the car crash isn't the business. It's actually, there's something else going on in their life. There's a parent that's critically ill, or there's a divorce that's on the agenda, or there's an autistic child that is taking up so much time. But this man or woman, the business owner, is so focused on, I need to make this work, I need to make this work. And what happens is they burn out. That because they keep focusing on the numbers, they don't go home and think, actually, I need to take a break from the numbers. I need to look at the plan. I need to look at my son, my daughter, my wife, my mum, my dad. I mean, I could draw a mind map of sometimes hundreds and thousands of people that are affected. If I was to do a flow chart, starting with a director coming to me saying, I'm in trouble. I think I need to go bust or go into liquidation, or I'm on the verge of bankruptcy. And when you tackle the statement that he makes and then you go through it in over a couple of meetings, actually sometimes they're not on the verge of bankruptcy or liquidation. There's always other things going on. And I always say to people, that don't start a business and run the business as on a whim, because they, like I was saying to Bhagirat Pai, who's in the audience there, that in our town in Amersham there are 11 coffee shops because nobody's done the market research to run yet another coffee shop, and I've probably acted for about 5 of them and helped them close down. So I feel like don't make it about the numbers. When I started Navigate Business Recovery, I was working full-time for a firm called Assets, and I gradually went down. So I was doing 5 days a week. I then went down to part-time 4 days a week, and then did the market research in the extra day. and then 6 months later, cut down to 3 days a week. And eventually, after 18, 19 months, I resigned and said, I can't do this anymore because I'd already got a business set up. Navigate Business Recovery was born. I'd already had like a half a dozen clients signed up. But I find that some people, they think, I've had a really bad day today. It's been a bad week. It's been a bad month. Actually, the last year has been absolutely rubbish. I'm going to walk in January and resign. Don't do that. You know, when you're used to earning, like me, £110,000 or about 150,000 with commission and bonuses, to let go of that income on an annual basis is a lot of money. If you've got a wife, a husband, children, family to support, starting a business has to be thought out really, really carefully. Business owners take not 1 year. I mean, I would say to people, take 2, take 3 years to analyze and dissect what you want to do, what you're passionate about, you know. Make it a hobby to start off with and then start the business, you know.
Thanks, Vee. Nilesh, what about you? Because your work sort of in the thick of markets, stock prices, you know, going up and down. Has there been a moment driven by market sentiment that has really tested your confidence as a business owner or your instincts, and you've thought, gosh, I've gone wrong there?
Well, the sentiments, the market sentiments, the market uncertainty, it do shakes up the confidence. It, do distracts us. Being a business owner, we started this company like 3 years ago. We are also humans, so such moments do disturb us. But then the fact is, which we all should understand, is the fundamental of any, opportunity. Uh, so this uncertainties and the sentiments are temporary. These are all humors, hearsay, and all those things. And it will go just pass away with the time. So it's not going to last for long. But what will last for long is the fundamental core values of any economy or the any investment opportunity. So for us, for our business, since we basically focus our investments into India, we look at the fundamental values in India. And I'm sure all of us would have read, heard of, experienced, but I'll just try to summarize few things about the fundamental values of India. There's a huge difference between the achievements and the things India has achieved in the last decade vis-a-vis what they have done in the first 60 years of the independence. Uh, you know, to just list on the few. So, the political stability and the approach. We all know we have a political stability. This current government is there for the 3 terms. But the approach of this leadership is, towards growth. So, which is a core to the fundamental values of any growth economy. The second is the education boom. In this decade, India has doubled up the number of IITs and IIM colleges. Now, this is the need of an hour. Now, for any growing economy, the education is very important. Now, this gives a pool of talent, which will be the new entrepreneurs and the growth engine for any nation. Medical facility. My God, no, the kind of the hospitals which are getting built in India are amazing. The kind of people, from across the globe visiting India for the medical facility. Medical tourism has become a sector in India nowadays. Then we have infrastructure, growth at everywhere. Look at the metro lines, the number of airports which are getting built. Then financial inclusions, the number of bank accounts and the banking transactions happening in India. Then GST is a policy reform, Make in India. So all these things, creates a fundamental value for the India growth story. And if these things are strong, then the market sentiments, have to be ignored. Obviously, they have some disturbance, but it gets ignored. Just to add few more things, looking at the demographic trends of India, where more than 70% of the population belongs to a working age group, which is amazing. Then the 1.5 billion people in this country, the self-consumption story itself, will lead to the growth of India. So if you add up everything together, then in the long term, when you believe that the India will grow, these short-term sentimental swings don't disturb you. So, I personally believe in the eighth wonder of the world, which is compounding. So that can only happen in a long term. So never break that compounding thing. Let the return, the investment compound. So that's my take on this point.
That's great. I've just been given a 5 minutes time left. So, before, I'll just wrap up very briefly and then, we can go to the audience for some questions. I'm sure they've got some cracking questions for the three of you. So I guess, just hearing from all of you and your stories as global Indians, it's really proud to see how we're not just contributing to the global economy, but we're actually very, very actively shaping it. And as you've talked about your culture and your roots and how that's shaped in some of the business decisions you've made and your leadership journey, it's just clear that your success is not measured in the valuation of your multi-billion-dollar companies or capitals that you've raised, but it's in the values, I think, that you bring to your businesses. And being a global Indian, and I hope you don't mind me speaking for yourself, being global Indians, that doesn't mean leaving your roots behind. It actually means growing from them. So with that, before we just move to the floor for Q&A, thank you so much for your time and being part of this conversation. I've really enjoyed, getting to understand and know about your businesses and chatting with you earlier. So I'll just open the floor. I believe we've got 4 minutes. We can probably have 1 or 2 very brief questions.
Did we not plant
Don't be
questions
shy.
before?
Oh, there is this gentleman right at the back.
You have
Somebody
planted
can
a
just
question.
Get the mic to
Great.
him, please.
Okay. I'll shout. Hi.
Oh, there's a mic coming to you.
I think the kind of commonality between the conversation was about cultural intelligence and navigating a global world where cultures are different, languages are different, people are different, etc. What I have found through my research, my area is finance, but what I have found is actually, of course, in finance, there is no culture. I mean, or rather, the science doesn't talk about culture at all. But actually, also when we extend from finance into business, if we look at especially the European and Anglo-American kind of domination of the business world and the language of business, culture has very small place in it because they want to overpower global business with their mindset and they can't see why it is they need to engage with cultural difference. So I guess my question is, what do you guys think about how to start? Because cultures are complex. I mean, as we heard, Avinav talked about his Japan experience. It's not easy. Culture is not a formula. Culture is not something that you can teach in a classroom. But at the very basic level, leaders have to recognize that cultures can be different, that cultures are important, that subcultures do cost money and they can lead to large losses if you get it wrong. So things like that. So just a question around that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think Avinav, do you answer
Sure,
that
I'll
question?
try. I'll try and get the question right. So your question was more around how to lead in creating positive culture and imbibing of our values into the organizations we build, if I got that right. Honestly, the only thing I've found to work is doing it by example. So when I say, lead by empathy, all of our employees across all of our companies have, for example, access to mental health programs, right? So they'll have access to therapy. Every single employee will have access to it from day one. Just thinking about when I say building with empathy is like we reward value champions in that way, supporting them, ensuring that those examples come to light and distributed across the broader org. I think when I talk about humility, given it's a sort of a startup organization, the way we continuously think is iteration, is just ensuring that, right from us downwards, no job is too small or no job is beneath us. If I need to, clean the shop floor, if I need to go deliver something, if I need to, write my own digital marketing ad, I'll do all of it, right? So I think just demonstrating that I've found to always be very relevant. And one sort of question which we also ran out of time on was values that you touched upon a little bit. I do think the anchoring in Indian values helps a lot, or has helped a lot, I think, for a lot of the successful companies out there, a lot of the CEOs now coming from the Indian diaspora as well. But just to double click on what I think the 2 things or 3 things are there. Number one, I think, is just this and I think Indian parents do that, and I'm sort of seeing that I'm doing it myself, is this toxic trait of telling you that nothing is too big or nothing is impossible. I think it helps. I think it creates almost this limitless belief and confidence in us as we grew up. As you talked about the ambitiousness of your daughter over when we were speaking earlier. So that's, I think, one thing. The second thing, I think, is this giving back the idea that it has to be a collective good versus an individual good. So building companies for impact, building companies for social and societal and community impact, as opposed to building companies that create the largest economic outcome. And I think that's where you'll see more and more companies becoming bigger. I think the third thing that links with that is a sense of purpose. Again, all economic data points towards the largest outcomes in the stock markets tend to be companies that are more purpose-driven. And I do think India as a country, and we are very purpose-seeking. We are always inward-looking. People, whether it's this yoga, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's any of our sort of practices. So I think just having a very strong sense of purpose and allowing it to shine and not being ashamed of it, I think is super critical. Like, we tend to also try to blend in with sort of an American company or an English company or whatever it is. I think being honest with yourself and really owning it, and finding your purpose deep within, I think those are the few things that I've seen successful Indian CEOs, successful Indian founders do on the global stage repeatedly. And that's, I think, contributing massively to their impact on the global stage.
Thanks, Avinav. Yeah, sure, quick.
So, in my experience, the cross-cultural differences, this can be resolved by following TNC, not terms and conditions. So transparency and communication. So this is my take, and this is what I personally try to do and has helped me in my life.
Thank you. I think I'm just being asked to wrap up. So any burning questions, we can take them offline. Very happy to speak to you, ma'am, later. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being part of the panel. Thank you, Prateek, for inviting me to moderate this. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Shalini.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.